All right, today we're going to talk about something that's become this central paradox of the modern workplace, cyberloafing. It's something a ton of us do, something managers are always worried about, but something that almost nobody really understands.
So let's just dive right in with a question that probably hits pretty close to home for most of us. You're at your desk, you've hit a mental block on a project, so you pull out your phone for, a quick 5-minute scroll. Is that just a harmless break, or is it something you could get fired for? Well, the answer, as you're about to see, is way more complicated than you'd think.
Okay, so let's get on the same page. What even is cyberloafing? It's basically a slang term that came out of the 90s tech boom, and it covers the whole shebang. Checking your personal email, scrolling Instagram, watching a quick YouTube video, all on the company's dime and network. And yeah, as the name kind of suggests, it definitely started out with some pretty negative vibe.
So just how widespread is this so-called secret habit? Well, what was once a pretty minor issue is now happening in pretty much every single office, and let's be real, every home office all around the world.
And the sheer scale of this is kind of staggering. Before 2007, you had maybe a quarter of employees doing this. But then the smartphone happened, and that number just exploded to over 60%. For a lot of people, especially younger folks, picking up your phone is just a reflex now. It feels more like a social norm than some kind of workplace crime.
Now let's look at this from the traditional management point of view. For a lot of companies, cyberloafing isn't just a harmless little distraction. Oh no, it's a source of some very real risks that definitely keep leaders up at night.
And the risks are pretty significant. Beyond just the simple loss of productivity, a single careless click can open up the entire company to viruses. All that personal use can slow the network down for everybody, and in some cases, it can even land the whole organization in serious legal trouble. So yeah, this is about a lot more than just wasted time.
And make no mistake, the stakes here are incredibly high. Get this. Data from the American Management Association shows that 1 in 4 companies has actually fired an employee over internet misuse. The consequences are absolutely real.
Okay, so we've seen the risks, we've seen the crackdowns, the firings, but what if I told you there's a completely different side to this story? What if cyberloafing could actually be good for business?
And this is where we get to the central paradox. The myth, right, is that cyberloafing is a sign of a bad, lazy employee. But the reality, according to a whole lot of new research, is that these little digital breaks can actually relieve stress, fight off boredom, and, get this, even boost your overall productivity.
So let's break down that upside. Studies are showing that if you let employees cyberloaf, within reasonable limits, it can actually make them happier at work. And happy employees, they're way more likely to stick with the company for the long haul. Those little breaks act like a mental reset button, especially on a stressful day, which can ultimately lead to better focus and, you guessed it, higher profits.
Now, this is a really fascinating insight from a study at the NUS Business School. It turns out that when employees cyberloaf, they often feel just a little bit guilty about it. But that guilt doesn't make them slack off more. Actually, it does the opposite. It makes them more self-aware of their responsibilities, more conscious of how they're using company time, and that can lead to them being even more engaged.
So, here's the million-dollar question. How does a company get all the good stuff from these little breaks without falling for all the bad stuff? The answer isn't about banning it or ignoring it. It's about managing it with a really smart, balanced approach.
So how does a company actually pull this off? Well, experts pretty much point to a simple 3-step strategy to strike that delicate balance.
Step 1 is all about being crystal clear. I mean, you can't enforce rules that people don't even know exist, right? So companies need to create a formal, acceptable use policy that spells out exactly what's okay and what's not. And that includes being upfront that, hey, when you're on the company network, you shouldn't expect total privacy.
Okay, step 2 is monitoring. But, and this is a huge but, you have to be transparent. A lot of companies use software to block dangerous sites or track usage, and that's totally reasonable for security and legal reasons, but you have to tell your employees it's happening, and you have to tell them why. Secretly spying on people just breeds distrust. It never works.
And finally, step 3 is all about consistency. If 2 employees do the exact same thing, they should get the exact same consequence. As soon as you start applying discipline randomly, you destroy morale way faster than a little bit of online shopping ever could. Fairness is everything.
So let's zoom out a bit. What does all of this mean for the future of work? Because now, with so many of us working remotely or in hybrid setups, the whole conversation is shifting away from control and towards something else entirely. When you boil it all down, it really comes down to these two different paths. You've got the controlling approach, with total bans and secret spying, which, let's be honest, usually backfires and leads to distrust and people quitting, or you have the trusting approach, one built on transparency and clear guidelines, which leads to engagement, loyalty, and way better performance. And this has never been more critical than it is right now. When your team is working from home, you just can't look over their shoulder. So if you try to micromanage every single click, you're sending a very clear message: I don't trust you. And that lack of trust is a guaranteed way to kill productivity and drive your best people away.
And that leaves us with one last really crucial question to think about. In a world where work can happen literally anywhere, maybe the best management tool isn't some strict policy or a fancy piece of software. Maybe it's just a culture of mutual trust. What do you think?